Patamaham Bande Paramananda Madhavam Sri Caitanya Ishwaram Katanchana Smrite Yasmin Dushkaram Sukaram Bhavet Vismrite Viparitam Syat Sri Caitanyam Namamitam. Okay, so Rudradip Nimai Prabhu, could you kindly share the screen? Any volunteers to read today?
I can read through. I think nobody is like reading. I was waiting like anybody else they want to read, they can read through. If nobody is like this one, I'm really happy to read.
Please go ahead.
Yes. India unifying ISKCON. During 1975, Srila Prabhupada increasingly referred management problems to the GBC, specifically to the annual GBC meeting in Mayapur. From the beginning of ISKCON, he had been saying, it's not one man's work. He had created the governing body commission to relieve himself of the staggering burden of personally managing his growing world organization. Always remember, he had written to a GBC member that you are one of the few leaders I have given this responsibility to, and your task is very great. Prabhupada saw the progress of his movement as a wonderfully successful phenomenon, proof of the direct mercy of Lord Chaitanya upon his humble efforts. ISKCON was his service to his Guru Maharaja, and now his disciples should maintain it and increase it as their service to their spiritual master. He said he wanted to see 108 flourishing temples before his departure from the world. Keeping those temples alive was to be the work of his sincere followers. He wrote to his GBC representative for Australia. All temples in Melbourne, London, Paris, Bombay are all very nice. Everything is very bright and brilliant. The deity is proof of the sincere services. It's the duty of the GBC now to maintain this. The duty is to enthuse them and maintain. Problems were inevitable for a preacher of Krishna consciousness. Many sadhus therefore preferred to remain in a holy place without preaching. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and the great acharyas in the Sampradaya of Lord Chaitanya had been concerned with offering the Lord's devotional service to as many conditioned souls as possible. Yet, to take up this path, one would have to be tolerant. Financial needs, national and local governmental restrictions, ignorant and demonic enemies of pure devotion to the Lord, envy, personal ambition, and disagreements among neophyte devotees, struggles, and fall downs in the attempt to avoid illicit sex and intoxication. All these and many more problems complicated the preacher's mission. Srila Prabhupada, however, knew the struggle was worth it, even to save just one soul from the cycle of birth and death. Prabhupada wanted his more advanced disciples to share the struggle with him. And when he saw competence and sincerity in some of his senior members, he tried to turn affairs over to them and concentrate more on his life's mission of presenting all 12 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Always, the devotees were enthusiastically pressing Prabhupada to translate and write more books so that they could read them and distribute them. Srila Prabhupada replied that he was trying his best, but that the task was not mechanical. Great concentration and peace of mind were required. He could not write while at the same time being besieged by dozens of threatening complicated issues. When the GBC member responsible for Gurukula wrote Srila Prabhupada with a plan that all ISKCON centers should support the educational system, Prabhupada replied, as far as taxing the centers for the maintenance, that should be considered among the GBC. When a controversy arose in the Stockholm Center and devotees appealed to Prabhupada for a judgment, he replied, "This must be considered at a full meeting of the GBC." And he added, "All of our students will have to become Guru, but they are not qualified." Srila Prabhupada said that sexual attraction, making unnecessary changes, and fighting among god brothers were all Western diseases. Krishna consciousness was the path of perfection, and if his disciples stayed persistently and sincerely on the path, they could certainly succeed. Sometimes, however, Prabhupada saw the Western diseases overcoming his disciples, and even the GBC members would seem unable to stop it. Yet, unless they spared him from such headaches, how could he do the higher work? GBC, he said, must mean that by his managing, there are not any complaints, so that I can be relieved to do the translation work. He had expounded on this principle in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. When the disciples are grown up and are able to preach, the spiritual master should retire and sit down in a solitary place to write and execute Nirjana Bhajana. This means sitting silently in a solitary place and executing devotional service. The devotees of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness now render service as preachers in various parts of the world. Now they can allow their spiritual master to retire from active preaching work. In that last stage of the spiritual master's life, the devotees of the spiritual masters should take preaching activities into their own hands. But it was like trying to control the wind. When the difficulties mounted, the devotees would run to him like children running to their father. Sometimes a disciple would simultaneously ask him to write his books and then drop a serious problem in his lap. One of the leaders in America responded to him that some devotees were not following the principles, but that Srila Prabhupada should please stay in India and continue writing peacefully. Prabhupada wrote back, "If the old habits come back, then everything is finished. If my mind becomes disturbed in this way, then how can I concentrate on book writing? It's not possible. Better not inform me anything and let me sit in Vrindavan." Sometimes Srila Prabhupada uttered the phrase, "Let me sit in Vrindavana," as if to give up managing the whole problematic society. Everyone knew he would never leave ISKCON. He had already sacrificed his life to save the world by leading the Krishna consciousness movement. But when would his disciples mature? Srila Prabhupada wrote, "I want that the GBC relieve me of all management, which means they have to manage the way I manage." And often he would say, "Do as I am doing." When controversies and disagreements among the GBC secretaries themselves came before him, he would refer them to the GBC body. I appointed GBC for peaceful management of affairs, and now you are creating disturbances among yourselves. So how can I be peaceful to translate my work? So all these things should be kept in abeyance for the time being, and when we meet in Mayapur, we can discuss amongst the entire GBC. The spiritual sky questions and all other questions of this nature will simply have to wait until we discuss it in Mayapur. Srila Prabhupada continued to hold the GBC responsible for settling the affairs of ISKCON. For better or worse, he wanted all his disciples to accept the GBC as their authority. And he trusted that when the GBC members all met together, working under his guidance, they could solve the problems. But whether they could actually spare him, allowing him to peacefully write his books, seemed doubtful. During 1975, a controversy arose among some of the ISKCON members, including some of the GBC members, as to whether Grihastha devotees, married men, would actually be spiritual leaders in ISKCON. Although the Krishna consciousness philosophy clearly explained that any devotee, regardless of his ashrama, could become qualified and purified, the controversy grew. In September, a sannyasi GBC member flew from US to Vrindavana just to suggest to Prabhupada that another GBC member, Agrahastha, was not qualified to lead. Srila Prabhupada, however, said the matter could be settled at the annual GBC meeting. But when the next day a letter came from Rameshwara supplicating Prabhupada to continue his translating work, Prabhupada replied that he was prepared to work at his writing, but that when one leader flies 10,000 miles to lodge a complaint against another, then what can I do? If you all leaders cannot work together, then how can you expect the others to cooperate with you? Differences may be there, but still you have to cooperate together. Otherwise, where is the question of my being relieved of so many problems and decisions? As the third annual international festival approached, the long-standing problems of various discontented parties awaited settlement in the court of the GBC. Srila Prabhupada would be arriving in Mayapur on January 17th, almost 2 months before the GBC meetings and the gathering of devotees. With perhaps 1,000 devotees attending, there would be blissful kirtanas, classes, and parikramas, and there would be problems. Prabhupada made it clear that the proper way of settling the controversies was not by gossiping about them, not by pressing him for a ruling, but by trusting the GBC. Prabhupada himself would stand by the decisions of the GBC, or if necessary, correct them. And so sincere followers should also not hesitate to follow. At the Mayapur meeting, whatever we have decided, that is good for 1 year. So if anything has to be done, it will be decided by majority decision of the GBC. I do not wish to give any decision without the GBC's verdict. My only grievance is that I appointed GBC to give me relief from the management. But on the contrary, complaints and counter complaints are coming to me. Then how my brain can be peaceful? So best thing is that we wait for the Mayapur meeting and decide there combinedly what to do. If there are any discrepancies, that will be discussed at the GBC meeting in Mayapur. How can one man manage the whole world affairs? January 17, 1976. En route from Calcutta to Mayapur, Prabhupada stopped at the mango grove and took breakfast, fruit, vada, nuts, and sweets. Even before reaching Mayapur, he was enjoying the peaceful atmosphere of the Bengal countryside. Soon he would be at the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, his special place of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. More than 50 adult devotees and 30 young Bengali Gurukula boys were waiting for Srila Prabhupada at the gate. For the first time, Prabhupada beheld a large entrance dome recently built over the gate. A thick 20-foot flower garland stretched across the gateway, and before it stood Bhavananda Goswami holding a small silk cushion on which rested a pair of scissors. Stepping out of the car into the bright sunlight, Prabhupada took the scissors and cut the garland, sanctifying the gate. Prabhupada smiled. Everyone cheered as the gate swung open and Prabhupada entered, followed by the ecstatic Kirtan party. As Prabhupada walked toward the temple of Radha Madhava, everywhere he looked, he saw blossoming flowers. Clay pots of burning frankincense billowed fragrant smoke, and women stood on the second floor veranda offering showers of rose petals as Prabhupada approached. The main building was decorated beautifully. Walking beneath the orange silk umbrella amid the devotees and exuberant kirtana of the holy name, he appeared regal and triumphant. Inside the temple, where dozens of garlands hung from the ceiling, Prabhupada came before the golden forms of Radha Madhava and offered prostrated obeisances. He felt he was in Vaikuntha. Because of the arrangements the devotees had made, he said, Krishna was smiling. Later that day, as Prabhupada was taking his massage, his servant Harishauri suggested that this would be a good place for retirement, either Vrindavana or Mayapur. Prabhupada replied, no other place, that is sure. In the afternoon, Prabhupada inspected the grounds and buildings. He was pleased at the spaciousness of the prasadam hall built to seat 1200, and he remarked that its size reminded him of the Bombay railway station. But when he found the steps to the kitchen dirty, he criticized strongly. One of the devotees explained that it was usually cleaned, but that the devotee who always did it was chanting his japa. You are chanting japa, said Prabhupada, and it has not been cleaned for 300 years. Clean first, then japa. Under the plea of japa, they are simply dozing. He said that anyone who finds a situation affected by the mode of ignorance but doesn't act to correct it is also being affected by the mode of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada walked down to the bank of the Jalangi to see the boat of the devotees were using for traveling from village to village. On board, he praised the simple life of traveling and preaching. He also went to the Goshala and saw the calves and cows, and he drank a cup of first sugarcane juice of the season from cane grown on the ISKCON land. And Srila Prabhupada walked through the fields, so fields to the proposed site of the Mayapur city, so to be described where various buildings could be located. Prabhupada suggested they present their plan to West Bengal government officials and ask them to provide the necessary land. Srila Prabhupada continued to meditate on the Mayapur city, and a few days later he composed a letter to the Chief Secretary of West Bengal asking for help in acquiring land. ISKCON should not be misunderstood as a sectarian religious institution. He informed the Chief Secretary. Krishna's instruction in Bhagavad Gita, beginning with "We are not the body," were scientific and thus did not belong to any particular religion. Prabhupada also asserted that ISKCON programs, especially the one contemplated for Mayapur, would solve national and international problems through spiritual education. He mentioned features that would be particularly appealing to the Chief Secretary, such as the investment of foreign capital in the project, the flow of tourists who would come to Mayapur, and the hiring of thousands of local workers for constructing and maintaining the city. His description of the project was fascinating. Centered around a cultural exposition building, the total village communal development will unfold. The central exposition building is the first phase of a many-phased plan. It will feature the world's largest planetarium entitled the Temple of Understanding. This structure will be over 30 stories high and will have exhibits depicting all the levels of universal existence and all varieties of living conditions and all the planetary systems and exact detail through lights, models, dioramas, and wells. There will also be daily scheduled exhibits and tours for the public, and even a moving escalator taking the public to the upper levels of the exhibition building. The planetariums exhibits on the various levels of existence in this world and beyond will be based on the scientific findings in the Vedic literatures, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam. This temple of understanding shall be surrounded by beautiful pathways, entrances, gardens, and water reservoirs. Four-storied buildings, 1,000 feet long, will stand at the perimeter of the central area on all four sides. These will be used for teaching general and specialized branches of education from primary level to postgraduate level. In this letter, Srila Prabhupada referred to difficulties in purchasing land for ISKCON's projects, since all the local landowners were escalating their prices far beyond the market value. If the government could make the land available at market prices, then ISKCON could immediately start its important work, officially inaugurating it on the birthday anniversary of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, March 16, 1976. In the meantime, Prabhupada was trying his own to acquire enough land to begin. The Mayapur city project would require extensive funding and many years of work to develop. but it would proclaim the glories of Lord Chaitanya with unlimited potency. Mayapur would become famous, drawing people from all over the world to see the unique modern application of timeless Vedic wisdom. Prabhupada explained to his disciples that although a sannyasi traditionally does not involve himself with money, the devotee's desire is to unite Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune represented by wealth, with Narayana, God. He said there was truth to the common saying, no one listens to a poor man. And where he too advertised A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami discoursing in an empty field in Mayapur, no one would come. Westerners, especially, should be able to hear about Krishna in a comfortable, attractive setting. Prabhupada planned, therefore, that visitors to ISKCON's transcendental city be well accommodated. Gradually, the world would be deeply affected by the dynamic demonstration of the artistic, philosophical, and humanitarian aspects of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada asked Surabhi to draw a master plan for Mayapur city. Staying up all night, Surabhi made a preliminary architectural sketch showing specific areas of the city for Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. The sketch also showed temples, schools, streets, walkways, residential buildings, cottages, a stadium, and an airport, as well as self-sufficiency features like windmills, irrigation systems, and agricultural fields. Prabhupada was taking his message when Surabhi brought him the drawing. Massage. When Surabhi brought him the drawing, Prabhupada's golden body was glistening with mustard oil as Harishauri carefully, strongly massaged his head, back, chest, and limbs. Prabhupada was relaxed and silent, his eyes closed in meditation. But when Surabhi entered with the drawing of Mayapur, he became animated. Prabhupada liked the drawing and talked about it forever. Now, Surabhi should make a formal drawing and approach professional architects and appropriate government agencies. The devotees coming to Mayapur should also see it. As fabulous and far reaching as it was, the Mayapur city should now become a reality. As the festival grew near, some of the sannyasis arrived, hoping to associate more intimately with Srila Prabhupada before the flood of devotees began. A major topic of discussion among the sannyasis was a controversy over the role of Grahastha men in ISKCON and the influence of women and children on the sannyasis and brahmacharis. Those in the renounced order, some of the sannyasis were suggesting that ISKCON should be more structured to separate the renounced orders and the preachers from the householders. They began airing their views before Srila Prabhupada, who then guided them. On one morning walk, Jayapataka Swami inquired about the standards required before a man could take sannyasa. To become sannyasi, Srila Prabhupada replied, the other three processes are there to become brahmachari, to become grahastha, and to become vanaprastha, stage by stage. But if one is able, he can take sannyasa, and that competency is also very simple. If you become fully Krishna conscious, then you can immediately become competent. Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. As soon as you fully engage yourself in Krishna consciousness, then immediately you become more than a sannyasi. Harishauri, a grahastha, inquired whether artificially accepting the renounced order could actually be indulging in another form of sense gratification. As soon as we manufacture something, Prabhupada replied, that is sense gratification. When we think, I want to fulfill my desire, that's all. That is sense gratification. It may be that I sit down under a tree or I sit down in a palace. The basic principle is sense gratification. The other day I was talking about Hira Chora and Kira Chora. Hira means diamond and Kira means cucumber. One is thinking, I shall steal one cucumber, and another thinks, if I steal, I shall steal the diamond. But the stealing propensity is there. One may think that I am only stealing a cucumber, and it is not very dangerous. But in the eyes of the law, both of them are criminal. So if we manufacture a concoction, yes, I have got a stealing propensity, but I'll not steal a diamond. I'll steal Kira. That is only mental concoction. But he is a thief, Jayapataka Swami. So is Grahastha life in Krishna consciousness allowing us to steal Kira? Prabhupada, yes, Kira Chora. The prostitute hunter is Kira Chora and the householder is Kira Chora. That's all. Again, Harishauri inquired whether artificial renunciation was sense gratification. There were different views among the disciples, and they wanted Prabhupada to make it very clear so that one party could not take quote from Prabhupada and claim it was universal. Renunciation is not artificial, said Prabhupada. It is a process. We have to give up this sense gratification. So go through a process to turn. Like sometimes in a health club, there is artificial swimming, is it not? Artificial swimming is not actual swimming, but it is to practice. Dayananda. But sometimes people who renounce, they become very proud. What is that? Prabhupada continued to reply that renunciation had to be actually practiced. Everyone must attend the Mangala Arati, he said. One must attend this. Otherwise, no prasadam. If you are too sick, then also you should not eat. There should not be sleeping at the time of Mangalarti because he says he's sick. Then at the time of prasadam, voracious eating. If the devotees were looking for Prabhupada to make an absolute distinction between Grahastha and Sannyasi, it was not there. He emphasized rather the actual quality and the practice of the individual devotee. On another morning walk, Hridayananda Goswami told Prabhupada of the sannyasis discussions. Hridayananda, we were thinking that if it would be nice to have the city centers for the preachers and for the women and children, it's much easier to maintain them on our farms. There, they can do a little work and produce their own food. Prabhupada, yes, in the farms, they can live and do some handwork. Guru Kripa Swami. They won't do it though, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada. Then you don't allow. If they do not follow the rules and regulations, then what's the use? Another sannyasi said that when many householders came together in big communities, an atmosphere of laziness developed. Whereas when lots of brahmacharis were preaching together, it was more enlivening. Prabhupada. Anyway, everyone should be engaged. That's all. No idle life. Never encourage laziness. If you maintain some lazy men, then everything will be spoiled. Devotee, I heard, Srila Prabhupada, that you remarked our society is not a love-making society. But these things are going on. Referring to an impropriety of two of his disciples, Prabhupada replied, yes, I have seen in Vrindavan. Other complaints arose. One leader argued that the temple should not have to carry the burden of maintaining women with children, but no husbands. Another complaint was that brahmacharis, by selling books, were in effect supporting the householders. Prabhupada continued to reply in a philosophical and practical way that whatever discrepancies were present should be rectified. Sense gratification, laziness, and failure to attend the temple programs should not be tolerated. But this condemnation of malpractices in devotional service did not fall exclusively on any particular group. Shortly after his arrival in Mayapur, Prabhupada had addressed a similar issue in his own correspondence. Mr. Chatterjee had written from Calcutta to say that he was preaching worship of Lord Caitanya and was eager to show Srila Prabhupada some articles he had written. Mr. Chatterjee stated, my theme is we can get to see our God, Gauranga, by taking sannyasa. Those who are grihasthas reach to the Godhead through Nama Sankirtan. Srila Prabhupada encouraged the man with the reply, your theme is okay. There were many devotees of Lord Chaitanya, like Advaita Acharya and even Lord Nityananda, who were grihasthas. Lord Chaitanya left his grihastha life. It's a matter of understanding Krishna. That is the real qualification. Whether one is grihastha or sannyasi, how well he knows Krishna. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung Griheva Vane Ta Thake He Gauranga Bole Dake. Lord Chaitanya says, Kiba Vipra, Kiba Sannyasi, Shudra Kene Naya, Yei Krishna Tattvaveta, Sei Guru Haya. The asterisks are, it doesn't matter whether one is living at home or in the forest, as long as he is chanting the name of Lord Chaitanya, he is a Vaishnava. The second sloka is, whether one is a Brahmana, Sannyasi or Shudra, regardless of what he is, he can become a spiritual master if he knows the science of Krishna. CC Madhya 8.128. So, please come and we shall discuss your articles. While sitting relaxed in his room, Srila Prabhupada and his temporary secretary Dayananda read him some recent mail. One letter was from a temple president having difficulty managing the devotees, and Prabhupada had Dayananda summarize the letter's points. He says, said Dayananda, that the devotees aren't behaving, and so he is criticizing, but they are not accepting. Simply criticism is not our means, said Prabhupada. Our means is to show by example. Dayananda made a note of it to use in typing Prabhupada's reply. Now, Srila Prabhupada, Dayananda continued, he is inquiring about his household life. This is not the business of the Guru, said Prabhupada. How to increase sex life and family life? They are not happy, these Western men and women. They become married, but they are not happy. Therefore, I recommend Brahmacharya and Sannyasa life. Several other devotees were also in the room with Prabhupada, and Jagat Guru, a Brahmachari, spoke up. Because they have no training, that's why they have so many problems. Whatever it may be, said Prabhupada. But they are not happy. Therefore, I recommend Brahmacharya and Sannyasa. Srila Prabhupada had already been disturbed by what he saw as a loose husband wife situation in Vrindavana. Now, hearing this letter from a householder who was improperly inquiring about his family life, he again turned his attention to Vrindavana and asked to see his GPC for Vrindavana, Gopalakrishna, who had recently arrived in Mayapur. It's not a free hotel for lovemaking, Prabhupada began, even before Gopalakrishna entered the room. Vrindavana is not a joking place. They must be serious for Krishna, and I shall give them everything. Don't worry about money, but manage. There is not scarcity of money. There is scarcity of management. Why so many children in the temple? It's not simply a place for husbandless women. Children should always be engaged, so they shouldn't create a disturbance all over. Srila Prabhupada said that if the mothers were irresponsible and only wanted to take care of their own children, then they should be sent away from Vrindavana. Two women could run a nursery and take care of many children, and other women could work, not go to the roof and lovemaking, said Prabhupada, and make a plan and go away. He stressed that since all India came to Vrindavana, ISKCON's center should be ideal in every respect. Otherwise, people would think that his disciples were hippies and no one would come. A good example of responsible care for children was in Mayapur, where a Gurukula had already been organized. Children are welcome, said Prabhupada, but make them jewels, not spoiled children. Varna Shankara hippies. For the sannyasis in Mayapur, Prabhupada's heavy words about irresponsible grihastha life fueled their own arguments. A few of them felt that grihasthas should not even live in the temples. That evening, when the sannyasis gathered in the Prabhupada's room, they discussed with him the position of families and children in ISKCON. One sannyasi reported not being allowed to preach in certain temples because he was against marriage and favored brahmachari. Others complained that expensive properties were being purchased to be used mostly as residences. The preaching was suffering, they said, and brahmacharis were being told to get married if they felt sexually agitated. Prabhupada felt the heavy force of the sannyasis protest, and he could perceive the antagonism between the ashramas. These things must be decided by the GBC, he said, and no one could go against their decisions. But he also expressed sympathy for what the sannyasis were saying. Families, he suggested, would serve in farm communities and live self sufficiently in Krishna consciousness. Our whole preaching program is detachment from material life, said Prabhupada. To stop sex life together, Grihastha is a concession for those who cannot give it up immediately. Otherwise, marriage is not required. It is simply burdensome. Legal or illegal, the after effects of sex simply means difficulty. March 7th. The GBC members assembled. The process was to make an agenda, discuss each issue, and then pass resolutions by voting. At the end of the day, they would go to Srila Prabhupada in his room and read the day's resolutions and for his approval or amendment. The first day they spent mostly in assigning zones and duties for each GBC member. They reported these results to Srila Prabhupada and he approved them. Prabhupada also addressed the issues of Grihastha and Sannyasa life, saying that all the devotees should become attached to Krishna's family, not to the stool family or pig family. Sannyasa life meant rejection of the false family, but not the family of Krishna consciousness. The Krishna consciousness society was based on renunciation, said Prabhupada, and therefore all sincere devotees were as good as sannyasis. The actual dress didn't matter, whether white or saffron, although an ideal grihastha should eventually come to the stage of formal sannyasa. He said that all his disciples should become gurus and each make thousands of disciples just as he had, thus spreading Krishna consciousness everywhere. Discuss in the GBC, he said, and make a decision, question and put to vote. But if you make Brahmachari party, Grihastha party, Sannyasi party, it will be finished. Everything should be done very openly. We have to work for Krishna. Why this whispering? It's not very good. The next morning, while Srila Prabhupada was on his walk around the Mayapur fields, the GBC Vice Chairman, Madhudvisha Swami, asked for guidance in preparation for the GBC meeting that day. The asterisk says Grihastha men traditionally wear white, brahmacharis and sannyasis wear black. Madhudvisha. The subjects that we are going to be discussing today in the GBC meeting are about the role of sannyasis and brahmacharis and grihasthas in ISKCON. In the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in one of your purports, you say that a sannyasi should never discourage a young man from getting married. But on the other hand, we understand that a sannyasi should encourage young men to remain brahmachari. So it seems to me like there is some kind of contradiction. Prabhupada, according to time and circumstance, just like Krishna says, Nityam Kuru Karmatvam, always be engaged in your prescribed work. And at last he says, Sarva Dharma Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. So now you adjust. That is not a contradiction. It's just suitable to the time and circumstances. Madhudvisha. But is there some conclusion? Prabhupada. The real aim is that you have to become the eternal servant of Krishna. Either you go through karma or jnana or yoga, it doesn't matter. The ultimate aim is to reach Krishna. Arjuna achieved the favor of Krishna by fighting and killing Hare Krishna. Prabhupada said no more. He had created the GBC to deal with just such problems, and he had instructed his GBC men personally in letters and in his books. Now they would have to apply those instructions according to time and place. The GBC met, discussed all day, and had a list of resolutions pertaining to the divisions of ashrama in ISKCON. Husbandless women with children could not live in ISKCON temples. Husband and wife could not live in ISKCON temples, even if separately. Before entering marriage, devotees should have a means of supporting themselves and not expect to live off ISKCON. Upon getting married, a householder would be financially responsible for his wife until such time as he took sannyasa. The meaning of the sloka is give up all prescribed duty, dharma, and surrender unto me. Bhagavad Gita 18.66. Reading the resolutions to Prabhupada in his room usually evoked little verbal response from him. His practice was generally to nod in approval or occasionally to comment. But when he heard the resolution that husbandless women with children could not stay in the temples, he uttered a thoughtful hmm. Then he said, as for me, my only concern is that they shall not waste their valuable human life. He was speaking not in the tone of the official head of the society, you could veto resolutions, but in a very personal, humble way, as a pure devotee. After so much struggle, he said, they have got this human form, and I do not want that they should miss the opportunity. As for me, I cannot discriminate. Man, woman, child, rich, poor, educated, or foolish. Let them all come and let them take Krishna consciousness so that they will not waste their human life. Although the GBC members usually had plenty to say, after these remarks from Prabhupada, they remained silent. Finally, Tamala Krishna Goswami, the elected GBC chairman for the year, spoke. Yes, Srila Prabhupada, he said, so we will strike that resolution. Prabhupada also disapproved the resolution that a householder would have to give financial support for his wife for the rest of his life until he took sannyasa. You each be guru, he said, as I have 5,000 disciples or 10,000, so you have 10,000 each. In this way, create branches and branches of the Chaitanya tree. But you have to be spiritually strong. This means chanting your rounds and following the four rules. It's not an artificial show, it's not a material thing. Chant and follow the four rules and pray to Krishna in helplessness. We have to have enthusiasm. If we lose our enthusiasm, everything will become slack. In old age, I come out from Vrindavana. I had no money, nothing. In old age, I came out of from Vrindavana. I had no money, nothing. But I thought, let me try. Bhagavan spoke out spontaneously. You are still enthusiastic, Srila Prabhupada. Yes, Prabhupada smiled. I am enthusiastic. I don't think I am an old man. Sometimes we think we are old, said Bhagavan. No one is old, said Prabhupada. Na hanyate hanyamane shari. Sometimes in old age, one is pushed down, but I am enthusiastic. Prabhupada said he was pleased at most of the resolutions because they indicated that a strong GBC was now ready to relieve him so he could concentrate on his translation work. He said that the devotees would have to strictly follow for the entire year what the GBC had agreed on. There should be no changes unless he approved. And at the next annual meeting, they could make any changes necessary. The GBC chairman then called for a vote on an unresolved topic from the day's meeting. The topic had been discussed, but since it had not been approved, the chairman called for a vote. Everyone voted yes by raising their right hand. Then Srila Prabhupada raised his hand too. Also, his disciples immediately laughed at this endearing gesture. Yes, Prabhupada said, I'm simply following the GBC. Whatever you say, I have to follow. When the temple president heard about the GBC resolutions, many objected. They knew Prabhupada had approved them. but they thought that the actual spirit and interpretations of some of the sannyasis might give to the resolutions would cause a split in the society. Many of the temple presidents, being grihasthas, felt discriminated against. They wanted a chance to present their side. Prabhupada knew of the president's discontent and he brought up the subject on his next morning walk. Surrounded by sannyasis, GBC, GBC men, temple presidents, and others, he brought out the issues, attempting to bring his spiritual family into harmony. The sloka is the soul is not destroyed with the destruction of the body. Bhagavad Gita 2.20. I have heard, he said, that too much stricture on the grihasthas may cause some disturbance. Yes, admitted Madhudvisha. So, said Prabhupada, I think the grihastha themselves should form a small committee and define what they will do instead of forcing something on them. Because in this age, nobody can follow strictly all the strictures in the Shastras. Tamala Krishna objected to the idea of Grihasthas revising the GBC resolutions. In none of our resolutions, he argued, do we say anything about how the Grihasthas should live. The resolutions simply say how our society should be run. It doesn't say how Grihasthas should live. And on points of objection, Prabhupada has already corrected us. I think it may be further decided. Prabhupada continued. Make a small committee of 3 or 4 grihasthas. Then you define how you live. Changing the subject, Prabhupada asked when the pandal was going to be built. Today, 350 devotees were expected to arrive from the west. The pandal stage was supposed to have been erected and festivities, including theatre, would begin in the evening. But the devotees, irrepressibly absorbed in the Grihastha Sannyasi issue, could not refrain from pursuing it further. That is the distinction between the enjoying spirit and the renouncing spirit, asked Pushtakrishna Swami, returning to the theme. Prabhupada asked. Although the question was pointed, he remained poised and detached from their party divisions. His idea of what to do was definite, but his method of teaching it was careful and gradual. He already knew well the difficult task of satisfying divergent views among his strong minded disciples. For years, he had been making the ultimate decisions and teaching his disciples how to go forward in a united way. Once again, an issue was building that only he could solve if they would listen. Pushta Krishna. For example, as we have been discussing, there are different tendencies between the brahmacharis and the grihasthas. The attitude of the brahmachari is toward renunciation. If a brahmachari gives up his brahmachari life to become a grihastha, that means he is more inclined to the enjoying spirit, at least to some extent. So, how to deal with this situation? Prabhupada, if you want to enjoy, who can stop you? Kamala Krishna. But we cannot support it. We cannot support this enjoyment that should take on himself, that he should take on himself. Prabhupada. According to different positions and attitudes of 4 ashramas are there, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. This means that everyone is not on the equal platform. There are different platforms. But the whole idea is how to give up the propensity of enjoyment that is wanted. Pushta Krishna. We find in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Sukadeva Goswami would approach the householders in the morning just so long as to give them a little bit of spiritual knowledge, and he would accept the offering of some milk. So the sannyasis and renunciants generally they wouldn't very much relish the association of householders because of this enjoying spirit and the association that it entails. So we are finding also within our society that those who are inclined to remaining celibate, they are finding the association of persons, even within our movement, who have this enjoying spirit to be somewhat detrimental to their own spiritual life. Prabhupada, then what is your proposal? You should drive them away? Madhudvisha, unless there is association, then they will never become purified. Ramanakshna, no, that is not the problem because everyone comes together for association. They come together in the temple for kirtana, for lectures, for prasadam. These things are common activities. There is no question that we should not have common activities between all the ashrams. But for living, there must be separate arrangements. Prabhupada. Now, even in the temple, you are complaining that a husband and wife are talking. Prabhupada seemed almost coy in the way he gradually led and manipulated the issue. He was also hearing more clearly the minds and hearts of divided disciples. Tamala Krishna. Yes, they are not talking Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada. That you will find everywhere. Bhagavata. There is a complaint that sometimes is made that there is too much aversion on the part of the brahmacharis. But isn't that a quality of a brahmachari? That he should have a healthy contempt for his sense gratification? Prabhupada, I do not follow. The devotees crowded around as closely as possible. This was an important point. Pushta Krishna, he's saying that sometimes the brahmacharis and even the sannyasis may have a strong aversion to association with women and householder life. But sometimes the grihasthas will criticize the sannyasis and brahmacharis and say this is fanaticism. The grihasthas say that this is just as bad as the enjoying spirit because a sannyasi is meditating on the same thing except that he is averse to it. So Bhagavata Dasa's question is it better to be neutral or to be averse? Prabhupada, these are all fanaticism. Real unity is in advancing Krishna consciousness. Kalau nasteva nasteva. In Kali Yuga, you cannot strictly follow, neither I can strictly follow. If I criticize you, if you criticize me, then we go far away from our real life of Krishna consciousness. Krishna Krishna. So, is it correct to say that if we are not Krishna conscious, then it's not the Grihastha problem, it would be some other problem? Prabhupada. Yes, we should always remember that either Grihastha or Brahmachari or Sannyasi, nobody can strictly follow all the rules and regulations. In the Kali Yuga, it's not possible. If if I simply find fault with you, and if you find fault with me, then it will be factional, and our real business will be hampered. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has recommended that Harinama, chanting Hare Krishna mantra, should be very rigidly performed, which is common for everyone, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. They should always chant Hare Krishna mantra. Then everything will be adjusted. Otherwise, it's impossible to advance. We shall be complicated with the details only. This is called Niyamagraha. I think I have explained it. Madhudvisha, yes, in the nectar of instruction. Prabhupada, Niyamagraha is not good. Niyama means regulative principles, and Agraha means not to accept. Agraha means the opposite. Agraha means opposite. Too eager to accept the regulative principles, but no advancement spiritually. Both of them are called Niyamagraha. So the basic principle is that Niyamagraha is not recommended. If we advance in Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting 24 hours, Kirtaniya Sadahari, then things will be automatically adjusted. You cannot find in Kali Yuga that everything is being done very correctly to the point. That's very difficult. Just like our poet Allen Ginsberg, he was always accusing me, Swamiji, you are very conservative and strict. Actually, I told him, I'm never strict. Neither I am conservative. If I become conservative, then I cannot live here for a moment. So I am not at all conservative. I was living with one boy, God, urgence. I was cooking and I saw in the refrigerator some pieces of meat for his cat. So still I kept my food in that refrigerator. What can be done? They had been talking over an hour and Prabhupada had given definitive instructions. But it was not over yet. It was clear, however, who was in control. Later that morning, 350 devotees approached the precincts of Mayapur in the caravan of buses from the Calcutta airport. For most of the arriving devotees, this would be their first visit to Mayapur, and their excitement countered the fatigue of the long journey from the west. Free of worldly concerns, they had come to India to visit Srila Mayapur and to see Srila Prabhupada again. After 3 hours on the road, the buses had entered Mayapur, and soon the devotees were seeing the Gaudiya Math temples, the Srivasangana, the Samadhi of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and the birth site of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all appearing one after the other as the buses, horns blaring almost incessantly, veered around the winding turns of Bhaktisiddhanta Road. Villagers on foot and in rickshaws, buffalo, goats, and cows moved hurriedly aside. Local residents looked up with curiosity and surprise at the sight of hundreds of Western bhaktas arriving to celebrate Gaura Purnima. Then the arriving devotees saw on the flat Mayapur landscape the pinkish hue and beautiful features of ISKCON's Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, the place Srila Prabhupada had prepared for them, the home of which they had heard so much. As the buses arrived at the gate of ISKCON property, the devotees cheered to see the new domes and fields of flowers, and their eagerness to Srila Prabhupada increased. There would be formalities of registering and receiving a room, a few complications in locating and settling in, but nothing major. They were home now among fellow devotees. Soon they would be able to bathe in Ganges and to hear the schedule for parikramas to the holy places. Some devotees rested, while others met with friends from various places in the world. They shared the latest news and received experienced advice about the Ganges' swift current and about avoiding dysentery and mosquitoes. By early evening, they had all moved into the rooms and taken prasadam. The Shahnai musicians in a small room above the entrance gate began playing an evening raga. The sky darkened, and devotees began gathering in the brightly lit temple room for a gigantic kirtana. These devotees had been working very hard in various cities throughout the world, and coming to Mayapur was like a reward for their austerities and patient service. Now they could relax and enjoy spiritual life with no responsibilities other than to worship the deities, to see and hear Srila Prabhupada, to chant Hare Krishna, and to simply be Krishna conscious in the eternal abode of Lord Chaitanya. When Prabhupada heard that now almost 600 devotees were gathered in his Mayapur place of worship, he was very pleased. He inquired whether the prasadam and accommodations were sufficient and whether there would be a full schedule of engagements for everyone. Otherwise, he said, if the devotees remained idle, they would get sick or would gossip. He said everyone should simply chant Hare Krishna, go on parikrama, and engage in Krishna Katha. Some of the new arrivals, especially temple presidents, were drawn into this schism regarding grihasthas and sannyasis. Now,
Paddy, can you just pause for a
yes,
minute?
please, yes, please.
Actually, I haven't commented yet because this is an ongoing thing, the grihasthas and the sannyasis. And finally, Prabhupada will resolve this. So I'll wait for until then because it's not over yet. It's going to come. And finally, Prabhupada is going to solve it. So We'll see as it happens now. Okay, please go ahead.
Some of the new arrivals, especially temple presidents, were drawn into the schism regarding grihasthas and sannyasis. Now that all the temple presidents were together, they called for a special meeting, rallying together in their discontent. They disliked the resolutions restricting the place of grihasthas in ISKCON, and as they spoke and compared opinions, they found a particular focus for their grievances. Most of the objections were coming from the North American temple presidents and were aimed at the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party led by Tamala Krishna Goswami. The conflict had been building for at least a year, ever since Tamala Krishna had formed the Radha Damodar party. Within that year, the party had grown to about 150 men traveling all over North America and distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada had praised the party, which was responsible for 30 to 40% of the total remittances to the American BBT. Men on the Radha Damodar party lived with spiritually advanced sannyasis. They developed traits of austerity and detachment and had an enthusiasm for remaining celibate without a need for marriage. The Damodara party broke all records for book distribution and outdid all other zones and temples. An elite army of Sankirtana soldiers, they were the recognized world leaders of book distribution. More than 80 members of the party had arrived at the Mayapur festival, and they were given a special reserved section in the best building for their residence. But in their zealousness for renunciation and Sankirtana leadership, some of the Radha Damodar brahmacharis had developed a condescending attitude toward temple life and householders. This materialistic conception had reached the point where some men were judging the worth of a devotee on the basis of whether he wore white cloth as grihastha or saffron as sannyasi or brahmachari. Anyone in white could not be a spiritually advanced devotee. At least this was the misconception that the temple presidents felt had developed among some of the more immature members of the Radha Damodar party. The greatest grievance, however, was more practical than philosophical. The presidents claimed that the Radha Damodar party was stealing men from the temples. The temple presidents compared stories and cited numerous instances to prove that men had been lured from their services in the temples to join the Radha Damodar party. The philosophy that sannyasis were superior to grihasthas, the president said, was being used in an opportunistic way to convince men, the very best brahmacharis, to give up their posts in Prabhupada's temple and join the Radha Damodar group. This often caused serious difficulties. The temple presidents considered the preaching of Radha Damodar party to be unbalanced and selfishly motivated. So acute had the disagreement grown that some temples had forbidden the Radha Damodar party to visit, and some had banned Radha Damodar sannyasis from lecturing to the devotees. The Radha Damodar men, however, saw these restrictions as further proof of the householders' small mindedness and attachment. Srila Prabhupada bided this time on the volatile issue and went about his duties, receiving guests and supervising the management of the Mayapur temple and the festival. He was lecturing daily in the temple and satisfying everyone. To his servants and secretaries, however, he revealed that the schism was causing him anxiety, that the temple presidents were angry, disturbed him. One afternoon, he could not even take his nap because of the worry. This is very serious thing, he said to Harishauri during the massage. This difference of sannyasa and grihastha, everything will be spoiled. Harishauri compared the present schism to the schism that had destroyed the Gaudiya Math. Another time, when sitting in his room, Prabhupada picked up a decorative bookmark a brahmacharini had made for him. Such nice service, he said. How can it be refused? I have never stopped them serving simply because they are women. Rameshwara came to Prabhupada's room and showed him some of the recent BBT publications. They discussed their business, turning at last to the sannyasi grahastha issue. As Rameshwara began to offer his opinion, Prabhupada asked that other available sannyasis and GBC men come in for the discussion. Rameshwara was championing the temple's cause, relating some of the financial and practical problems of the temples were experiencing due to losing men to the Radha Damodar party. When men left, then book distribution declined in those temples. In the face of the heavy propaganda for joining the traveling bus parties, how could the loyal temple devotees remain satisfied collecting money mostly for maintaining the temples without being able to afford to distribute books? The temple devotees also wanted to have the ecstasy of book distribution, but that was becoming increasingly difficult due to the crippling tactics of the traveling bus parties. Rameshwara asked Srila Prabhupada to clarify the philosophical misconception that grahasthas were not advanced enough to manage the brahmacharis. Prabhupada mentioned the sannyasi Chota Haridasa, whom Lord Chaitanya had rejected for only slight association with a woman. Yet Lord Chaitanya had embraced a grahastha, Shivananda Sena, on learning that Shivananda Sena's wife was pregnant. Prabhupada said that although Lord Chaitanya's relationship with his sannyasis was different than his relationship with his grihastha, both were transcendental. The grihasthas were encouraged to perform family duties and raise Krishna conscious children. Addressing the sannyasis present, Prabhupada said that for them to be dwelling so much on the activities of the householders was inappropriate. It meant that sannyasis were thinking about sex more than the householders were. If the sannyasis were thinking all day long about married life, they would become contaminated. Prabhupada then told the story to illustrate his point. Once two Brahmanas were about to cross a river when a lady appeared in need of assistance in crossing. So one of the Brahmanas offered to carry her on his back. The other Brahmana was shocked but refrained from saying anything. After crossing the river, the lady thanked them very much and went her way. The two Brahmanas continued walking, but for hours the other Brahmana continued to talk about the incident. You let that woman climb on your back and touch your body, he said. And he continued talking. Finally, the other Brahmana corrected him. I carried her on my back for 10 minutes, but you have been carrying her on your mind for 3 hours. The temple presidents selected Jayadvaita, a brahmachari expert in Krishna consciousness philosophy, to present their case before Srila Prabhupada. Some of the GBC members holding the same views also went, and since much of the opposition was against the Radha Damodar party, the Balakrishna Goswami also came to defend his party. The many members of the Radha Damodar party who had come to Mayapur looking for spiritual bliss after a year of demanding Sankirtan service were hearing themselves criticized and wanted to retaliate. The jubilant spiritual atmosphere of the festival was threatened by a political rift. Jayadvaita explained to Prabhupada that the temple presidents felt the propaganda that Grihasthas were incompetent to lead brahmacharis was actually just a device. The real issue was men and money. By telling the temple brahmacharis not to work under grihasthas, the Radha Damodar sannyasis were able to lure the men from their authorized services in the temples. The Malakrishna agreed that if such false ideas were circulating, then they should be stopped. But he maintained that his party was not actually perpetrating such philosophy. Accusation passed back and forth before Srila Prabhupada, who then delivered his opinion. The standard should not be discrimination between Grihastha and Sannyasi. We should simply see according to the advancement in Krishna consciousness. Yehi Krishna Tattva Veta Sehi Guru Haya. This principle should be followed by his advancement in Krishna consciousness. Phale, Phalena Parichiyate, judged by the results, not by the dress. We can see his position. By making party politics, everything will be finished. Prabhupada said that a brahmachari generally assisted a sannyasi, and a sannyasi was a preacher. The grihastha is also the appropriate man to take care of the temple. If a brahmachari wanted to travel with a sannyasi, therefore that was all right. But if he has a responsibility, said Prabhupada, he must take. The real point, he said, was that the devotees should all think of themselves as servants of the six Goswamis. The whole problem before them was caused by forgetting we are servant of Krishna. It is not that a particular service is specially for a grihastha or a sannyasi. Prabhupada continued. He must be Krishna Dasa. A servant's service is judged by the results. Why this party and that party? Ei Krishna Tattva Veta Sei Guru Haya. Bhakti Vinoda was a grihastha. Bhakti Siddhanta was a sannyasi. Is one better than the other? No. So there should not be threatening. We are now worldwide organization. The asterisk says, regardless of social status, anyone who knows the science of Krishna consciousness is qualified to become a spiritual master. CC Madhyalila 8.128. Prabhupada repeatedly quoted the words Kiba Vipra, Kibanyasi, Shudra Kene, Naya, Ei Krishna Tattva Veta, Sei Guru Haya, thus dispelling the contention that ashrama determines the quality of a devotee. Whoever knows the science of Krishna, whoever is fully engaged in service of Krishna, Prabhupada stressed that person is a pure devotee. A sannyasi, Prabhupada said, could preach, but he could also manage. A grihastha could manage, but could also preach. Although Prabhupada had already brought up these points, now he was settling the issue completely. This discrimination, he said, must stop. It was not Krishna conscious, and the GBC should remove all resolution discriminating against grihasthas. Prabhupada emphasized that the real standard was to be Krishnadasa, the servant of Krishna. In that surrendered mood, a devotee should be expert and willing to do whatever service was needed. He gave the example that some 50 years ago, when he had been the manager in Bose's laboratory in Calcutta, the workers had gone on strike. To the remaining workers, he had said, "Come on, let's pack." They had accepted the menial labor and the strike had been ended. Similarly, whatever capacity of service was required, a devotee should do it. We must be very stubborn servant of Krishna, Prabhupada said. Prabhupada pointed out that he was probably the first bona fide sannyasi to arrange for his disciples' marriage. Certainly, he did not encourage disobeying the regulative principles, he said, but the real business was Krishna service. If that included arranging for marriages, then it should be done. But generally, the division is that the sannyasi is fully engaged in preaching, he said, and the sannyasi's preaching should not be checked. Whoever is in charge of something, let him remain. If there is some discrepancy, try to correct it. In every rumor, there is a grain of truth. Prabhupada was not only defining and settling the immediate quarrels, but he was elevating all the devotees to the level of dedicated and inspired Krishna consciousness. He was not siding with one party or watering down the philosophy to make peace. He was appealing to his disciples' intelligence, and more than that, he was entering their hearts and making them satisfied and truly desirous of working with one another. When Srila Prabhupada stopped speaking, he asked for a response. Jayadvaita said he thought the presidents would be completely satisfied with Prabhupada's decisions. Ramana said that the GBC would also be satisfied and that everyone by Prabhupada's grace would now go forward with the right understanding. The devotees then left Prabhupada's room in a joyful mood, prepared to join the others and take part in an uplifting non-political Gaur Purnima festival. The next morning, Prabhupada went for his walk on the roof of the Mayapur building. As soon as he began circumambulating on the roof, at least 2 dozen devotees, mostly temple presidents and sannyasis, joined him. The temple presidents felt very victorious. Their positions were vindicated, and the misunderstandings of the philosophy had been straightened out. Now everything was proper. The whole affair had increased the devotees' faith in Prabhupada and in the wisdom of following his order without false prestige. As they walked for Panchadravida, Swami, in a mood of humorous relief to the tension of the past days, began questioning Prabhupada in an odd way. Srila Prabhupada, he said, there is one thing I don't understand. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that story of Sakshi Gopala, the deity who came to witness for the young Brahmana. So the young man was serving the old Brahmana, and then the old Brahmana promised the hand of his daughter in marriage, and then the deity came to bear witness. So if he was such a pure devotee, why did he call the deity to come such a great distance just so he could become married? Why didn't he want to remain single? And why did he make the deity come just for his marriage? It was not only the words, but the way Panchadravida said them, jesting in the role of an overly critical sannyasi. And Prabhupada immediately entered the joking spirit. We are not against marriage, we are against illicit sex. But because no woman would have you, now you are saying that no one should marry. Just see the psychology here. The devotees began to laugh wildly. This is the sour grapes philosophy, said Srila Prabhupada. Because no woman will have you, nobody wants you, therefore you are feeling this rejection and thinking that nobody should get married. One morning of Gaura Purnima, on the morning of Gaura
Yeah.
Purnima,
Mataji, I think you can stop there.
yes, please.
Okay. This is the conclusion of the chapter. So we saw here a very long drawn tension between the sannyasis and the Grihastha temple presidents. We saw many features of that tension, but we notice finally that Prabhupada resolves that on the principle of whoever is actually advanced, that person should be honored. So there is, however, something which Prabhupada mentions earlier on in the conversation, which we should all remember, which is that whether it is grahasthas or sannyasis, everybody is trying to give up material enjoyment. So that is a common thing which runs through all ashrams. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says, Mahaprabhu Bhakta Ganer Vairagya Pradhan, Se Deki Preeti Hon Gaura Bhagavan, which means the most prominent characteristic of the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Vairagya. And seeing that Vairagya, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu becomes very happy. Mahaprabhu Bhakta Ganer Vairagya Pradhan, the most prominent is Vairagya. Say Deki, saying that Preeti Hon, he becomes very happy. Gohu Gaura Bhagavan. So this is something which is common to all the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is not that the sannyasis are renunciants and the grihasthas are trying to make the best of both the worlds, material worlds and the spiritual world. No, all of them are vairagis. Now, the concept of Vairagya in marriage has been wrongly applied uh, in the history of our movement by several individuals, while others have got it right also. But there have been, it has been applied immaturely. Vairagya does not mean uh, Vairagya from one's duties. Vairagya means Vairagya from the tendency for enjoyment. But Vairagya does not mean Vairagya from one's duties. So a Grihastha is expected to execute his duties very nicely, whether it is taking care of the husband or wife, whether it's taking care of the children, whether it's earning responsibly. So Vairagya is not giving up of duties. It's giving up of the enjoying spirit. Everything is done as an offering to Krishna. So what is being renounced is the enjoying spirit, and that is a very important characteristic of Grihastha life in Krishna consciousness. It is not that in Krishna consciousness one can have a Grihastha life where one can try to make the best of both the worlds, both material and spiritual. It's not like that. Everybody lives in one world, the world of giving up the tendency for material enjoyment. So those who are not able to give that up fully are permitted to enter Grihastha life with an idea to give it up. Like the idea, as Prabhupada writes in the here we see Madhudisha Swami. Later on, he changes his ashram. Of course, for sannyasi, there's nothing called change of ashram, but rather he falls down from the sannyasa ashram to the grihastha ashram. And traditionally in India, sannyasis, if they fall down into grihastha life, they're completely rejected. But however, Prabhupada also did not want those who are unqualified to accept the sannyasa ashram. But somehow in the circumstances where they did accept it and later fell down, he still wanted them to practice Krishna consciousness. So after Madhudisha Swami fell down, Prabhupada wrote those purports to the Gajendra and the crocodile incident. There he mentions that Gajendra, although an elephant, a very powerful animal, because he was fighting in the water, he became weak. And there Prabhupada explains that it is important that one be situated in that place where one can have the strength to fight. So Prabhupada compares this to the ashram situation. He says that if someone can find more enthusiasm being a grihastha to fight Maya, then one should be situated in that ashram. So the idea is wherever one can be enthusiastic to fight Maya. It is not that wherever one gets sense gratification that one needs. That's not the idea. The idea is, okay, one may get the sense gratification one needs, but the idea is one should be enthusiastic to fight Maya. So one gets a sense gratification for what? But that one needs for what? To be enthusiastic to fight Maya. So that is the fundamental principle of Krishna consciousness. It is not about how I shall get material enjoyment. Rather, okay, I am not able to give up something, material enjoyment, but yet I want to be enthusiastic to give up this enjoying tendency. I want to be enthusiastic to fight Maya. I want to be enthusiastic to practice and preach Krishna consciousness. That is the fundamental principle. So that is the common line. That is a common thread for both the grihasthas and the sannyasis. The tendency to avoid material material enjoyment, enjoying tendency, to give up enjoying tendency. And when one has that in one's consciousness, then it does not matter whether one is a sannyasi or grahastha. It is a question of attitude by which they make advancement in Krishna consciousness. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he would have his sannyasis offer full prostrated obeisances to his leading grahastha senior disciples. So he established the fact it's not a question of being a sannyasi or a grihastha. It is a question of advancement in Krishna consciousness. And as Prabhupada says, all of this is fanaticism. You know, this thing about who's more advanced, who's less advanced, is Grihastha more advanced, is Sannyasi more advanced. It's not a question of Grihastha or Sannyasi. It is a question of who is following properly. That one who is following properly with the right consciousness, that person makes advancement. And here we saw how Prabhupada, he receives a bookmark made by a brahmacharini, and it's wonderful bookmark. So Prabhupada, when he sees that, he said, how can I reject it? So Prabhupada came to engage the whole world in Krishna consciousness. So there is no question of him not denying someone an opportunity to express or render some service to Krishna. So Prabhupada was in that mood constantly, how to engage everyone in Krishna consciousness. But this thing was compulsory, that one should give up the enjoying tendency. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, he accepted people from all backgrounds, but he had one condition: give up sinful life, give up this sense gratification, give up this tendency for sense gratification. So Prabhupada resolves it very nicely. Give up this tendency for sense gratification, brahmachari grahastha. The main point is to engage in Krishna's service. And it doesn't matter whether sannyasi is managing or not managing. The point is to do the needful, to advance in Krishna consciousness, and to advance the Krishna consciousness movement. Okay. I mean, I don't think we have time to take up the conclusion of this. It's another 3-4 pages. We'll take that up in the next session. Any thoughts, questions, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanavad pranam, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, very quite an intense session, really, in terms of understanding this tension. And I'm not necessarily sure that the tensions have necessarily subsided in today's world either.
No.
Despite Prabhupada's clarity and crisp guidance to the then GBC and members of the community, I don't necessarily see that we have not necessarily tensions between sannyasis and grihasthas anymore, but this constant tension of supposed seniority in post as opposed to seniority of bhakti is still paramount. I think because you are a temple president, you take the assumption role that you are a senior devotee. That's not necessarily the case. A managerial position in ISKCON doesn't give you seniority in your devotion, but there is still this misconception in ISKCON, and particularly deployed by people within senior posts as demanding senior sort of respect for their seniority, supposedly in devotion. They don't equate to the same thing. It's not criticism. I'm just saying, it is a fact of material existence that hasn't eluded us in ISKCON yet.
That's right. That see, while it is important for us to maintain social etiquettes, that I mean, like for example, Prabhupada did say that the king is the representative of God. Similarly, temple president is the representative of God or of Prabhupada. So we need to have some social etiquettes due to which we respect these positions and behave appropriately. At the same time, it is also important that the persons in positions of authority behave in an exemplary manner by showing the principle of bhakti as most important. So if a temple president can offer prostrated obeisances to someone from the community who he sees as advanced, that will be a good example for others to follow. So while it's good for us to follow all the etiquettes about, okay, temple president is a representative of Prabhupada, manager, like that. It's good for us to maintain etiquettes, but at the same time, those in the positions of authority, it is good for them, for their Krishna consciousness, to recognize devotees who are advanced and show them appropriate respect and behave with them appropriately.
Yes, agreed, Prabhu. There was one observation that we just read about. Srila Prabhupada gave very clear instructions to those that were seeking clarity, and I can't remember which section it was, a little while back, where they asked about grihasthas not being maintained by the temple. And he said, no, grihasthas, they should only enter grihasthas when they can maintain themselves, and thereafter the temple should not be maintaining them. They should have their own maintenance, which is very clear and crisp instructions. How does that equate when we have grihastha couples managing temples with being with a salary?
I thought that Prabhupada did not accept it, right? When we read here.
Oh, I thought he said that yes, grihasthas should not be maintained by the.
No, I think that is the proposal came from.
Maybe I misunderstood that. Sorry.
When the GBC met, discussed all day, and by evening had a list of resolutions pertaining to the divisions of ashram in ISKCON. Husbandless women with children could not live in ISKCON temples. Husband and wife could not live in ISKCON temples even if separately. Before entering marriage, devotees should have a means of supporting themselves and not expect to live off ISKCON. Upon getting married, a householder would be financially responsible for his wife until such time as he took sannyas.
So that's clear then.
Prabhupada in his room usually evoked little verbal response from him. His practice was generally to nod an approval or occasionally to comment. But when he heard the resolution that husbandless women with children could not stay in the temples, he uttered a thoughtful hymn. Then he said, as for me, my only concern is that they shall not waste their valuable human life. He was speaking not in the tone of the official head of the society who could veto resolutions, but in a very personal, humble way as a pure devotee. After so much struggle, he said, they've got this human form. I do not want that they should miss the opportunity. As for me, I cannot discriminate man, woman, child, rich, poor, educated, or foolish. Let them all come and let them take Krishna consciousness so that they will not waste their human life. Although the GBC members usually had plenty to say, after these remarks from Prabhupada, they remained silent. Finally, Tamal Krishna Goswami, the elected GBC chairman for the year, spoke. Yes, Srila Prabhupada, he said. So we will strike that resolution. Prabhupada also disapproved the resolution that a householder would have to give financial support for his wife for the rest of his life until he took sannyas. So Prabhupada actually struck that resolution.
So no, my comment was in line with what Prabhupada said, I think, which is that, or at least that resolution, which Prabhupada didn't clarify upon, which was that a married couple or grihastha should not be supported by the temple, i.e. they should not be relying on ISKCON for their livelihood.
Which Prabhupada disapproved, that's what it says there, right? Prabhupada disapproved.
No, he did here from, sorry, maybe I misunderstood, but he's disapproving the fact that women sort of
that's one thing.
Husbandless women should not be.
No,
maintained.
then once again, later on, Satsvarup Maharaj mentions here, Prabhupada also disapproved the resolution that a householder would have to give financial support for his wife for the rest of his life until he took sannyas.
But that's different to ISKCON supporting. That's a householder supporting his wife. That's what he disapproved of. I'm saying ISKCON supporting a grihastha family.
Same thing. Because if you look at it earlier, GBC resolution is, upon getting married, a householder would be financially responsible for his wife until such time as he took sannyas. That is from the previous, the GBC resolution said that. Before entering marriage, devotees should have a means of supporting themselves, not expect to live off ISKCON. Upon getting married, a householder would be financially responsible for his wife until such time as he took sannyas. So this is the GBC resolution. So Satsvarup Maharaj is clarifying Prabhupada also disapproved the resolution that a householder should have to give financial support for his wife for the rest of his life until he took sannyas.
Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding here. I thought that is referring more to the householder's responsibility to supporting his wife as opposed to ISKCON supporting the Grihastha ashram.
Correct. Correct. And Prabhupada disapproved that. That's what he's saying.
Okay.
Upon
I think
getting married, see, before entering marriage, okay, first of all, husband and wife could not live in ISKCON temples even if separately. This is the GBSC resolution. Okay. Husband and wife could not live in ISKCON temples even if separately. Before entering marriage, devotee should have a means of supporting themselves and not expect to live off ISKCON. Upon getting married, a householder would be financially responsible for his wife until such time as he took sannyas.
yes, Prabhu. I think I misunderstood that. Apologies.
No. I mean, it's possible sometimes. No, basically, I think the idea was that, okay, the bottom line is this. Even in traditional Vedic life, Brahmanas were supported. The Brahmanical Grihasthas did not earn any means of livelihood. They were supported by society. So Prabhupada basically envisioned devotees living in the temple to be of a very high standard. I mean, the Grihasthas, not like mundane Grihasthas who want everything under the sun. Basically, I mean, the whole concept of Prabhupada's temple and Grihasthas, everything is centered around I shall use my full energy to serve Krishna. Not how I can get best of both worlds or how I can get some of this world, some of that world. That concept of some of this, some of that did not even exist actually. Whatever energy I have, whatever I have is for the service of Krishna. So when devotees with that attitude live in the temple, then that's not a burden for the temple. But otherwise it is, right? Because I mean, I've seen situations also like that where Grihasthas, if they're not like that, it creates a big controversy. But on the other hand, there are also Grihasthas like that whom temples are very happy to support. I'm happy. I mean, there are also Grihasthas who are willing to keep it very bare and simple, and there are temples that are happy to support them. Not
Yes,
all,
Prabhu.
but
Thank you. I was just trying to clarify the understanding there because in many temples there are clearly Grihastha families that are being supported by the temple, in engagement of their services, and they are on a salary. So I was just trying to square that in my head, but maybe I've misunderstood the resolution. So which is why I was trying to square the resolution between what was resolved and what still is the practice, which is Grihasthas effectively being engaged and paid a salary for services in the temple environment, and sometimes living in the temple as well. So,
see, that is still a legitimate concern. What should salary be given? What should be salary? These are all very very difficult issues to resolve on a generic in a generic manner. But in a general manner, that's very difficult to resolve. But the principle still remains that those who see, this is how it is, when a normal house, I mean, like a materialistic householder sees a devotee couple in ISKCON, they should not think they are just the same as us. If they can visibly say these people have sacrificed their lives to practice and spread Krishna consciousness, that is what really counts. Because if you are leading a life just like everybody else, that's not, I mean, they should be able to see tangibly that they are not into collecting things for their greed. Rather, they only require things for their need. That, I mean, that's quite, it's not a very difficult thing to see what kind of attitude devotees have, especially people who come from the outside world, they can clearly see the difference. If they're not able to see a difference, then there is a problem. Not with them, with us.
Yes, Prabhu. I can see. I mean, Vedically, a Grihastha ashram is supposed to maintain the other ashrams, at least the brahmachari and sannyas ashrams, at least, and it could be seen that it was almost turning on its head, where the brahmacharis were doing the book distribution, earning the bread for the temple, and then within the temple you were employing grihasthas to do services. So it was almost the brahmachari ashram maintaining the grihastha ashram. So I could see where the tensions were brewing, I guess.
Yeah, but then the brahmacharis, they generally don't like, I mean, I'm not saying everybody, but these routine things, they don't like generally, right? They like adventurous things. Who's going to do the routine work? That's not easy either. In general, if there were so many brahmacharis who could do all these things, then
No, I'm just saying I'm trying to envisage, whilst Prabhupada was there giving guidance, why was there such amount of tension brewing when there was a clear mood to serve Prabhupada, and the movement was a priority, and yet these tensions were brewing rapidly, quite intensely. So
by any stretch of imagination, during Prabhupada's time, by any stretch of imagination, Grihasthas led no luxurious life during Prabhupada's time, at least, for sure. By any stretch of imagination, no way. So they were pretty renounced at that point in time. So I'm not sure if the origin was that. These days, the origin is that. I agree with you. I mean, sometimes. But during those days, I mean, practically all the Grihasthas, and everybody lived in a more or less similar
the same in terms of the austerity, actually, wasn't it? So quite the contrary, actually. I think some of the Grihasthas you hear stories from were actually living an even more austere life than perhaps the brahmacharis and the sannyasis were. I mean, because they were maintaining. I mean, Prabhupada says several places in his purports that a Grihastha who is maintaining a family in Krishna consciousness is actually greater than a sannyasi who has no responsibility.
Yeah.
His mood was one of glorifying those that are in Krishna consciousness, that have taken the role of Grihastha ashram and bringing a family up in Krishna consciousness and maintaining everything else, if they are pure in their thoughts, of course. Not. So I mean, he was quite clear in supporting all ashrams equally. As you rightly clarified, the purpose of each ashram is singularly to increase our Krishna consciousness and our surrender of all material things. So yeah, thank you. Sorry, I've taken up a lot of time.
No, you're always welcome. We haven't heard from you for a long time. What else?
Yes. I have one small this one. There was one small part, little bit, not this discussion. Like there was one, like when Prabhupada went to the kitchen, the step was dirty. Then he said that anyone who finds a situation affected by the mode of ignorance but doesn't act to correct it is also being affected by the mode of ignorance. Can you just clarify about that, Prabhuji?
There is a further incident about it. Prabhupada, when he was walking in Mayapur, there was a public toilet, and Prabhupada would go and inspect every place. So he went and inspected the toilet. It was very dirty. Prabhupada is very upset. He said, how can this go on? Then you're all Brahmanas, and how can you tolerate this? Which means that you're also affected by the mode of ignorance. If only those who are in mode of ignorance can accept something mode of ignorance, right? For example, we cannot tolerate hogs or pigs eating stool, right? Why we cannot tolerate? Because we are in a higher mode. But a fellow pig can tolerate, right? So like that. So Brahmana cannot tolerate uncleanliness. Cannot. So like that. So those who are in the mode of goodness cannot stand mode of ignorance.
Yes.
So the fact that somebody is able to tolerate the mode of ignorance means that they are in the mode of ignorance.
Okay.
That is the idea.
Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, on the same point, Prabhupada also mentioned that he spent 300 years. And I didn't understand that. There was 300 years and something. Was it a reference to many births?
Prabhupada's famous expression. 300 years is a very famous expression by Prabhupada. I'm very fond of using that expression also when I deal with devotees sometimes. So I'll tell you that exact thing here. Basically, he's trying to say that he usually uses the expression like this as this place has not been cleaned for 300 years, like that. 1 minute. Let me just look at that.
It wasn't a reference to how many births he's taken or something like that.
No, I think 1 minute.
Prabhu, it's in 197 page number if it's a new edition.
Is that
197. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, that's exactly what Prabhupada is saying. You're chanting japa, said Prabhupada, and it has not been cleaned for 300 years. Clean first, then japa. Under the plea of japa, they're simply dosing. So again, this 300 years is when Prabhupada says it's just something is long neglected. He uses that expression 300 years. Like when Prabhupada, we read it last time also, right? When Prabhupada goes into the Vrindavan temple and then he sees a nice bookstall, everything is going wrong, and then only the bookstall has come out nice. And Prabhupada looks at the chandelier and he sees a nest of a bird and something like that. He says something like there also. This has not been cleaned for 300 years.
There's another important point here, isn't there, Prabhu, that he's saying the service element of your responsibility should come prior to perhaps even japa.
Yeah, see, this is something which has been debated back and forth in ISKCON sometimes, because sometimes what happens, devotees do service and they're not able to finish their japa. Then you have Prabhupada's instruction that of all my instructions, the instruction to chant 16 rounds is most essential. So yes, all that fits in as long as one is able to finish one's japa. If one is not able to finish one's japa, that should be like a real extraordinary situation. Some huge emergency came up to you by which you had to work to protect ISKCON or protect devotees or something like that. It should be really extraordinary one misses one's japa.
Sorry, my comment wasn't instead of. It was if there's service to be done, you do the service and then you finish your japa. I wasn't saying you use a service as an excuse not to do your japa, but in terms of whether if there's something to be cleaned and your japa, you're doing your chanting as opposed to cleaning that. I think from here, this incident, Prabhupada would have liked that to be cleaned and then you carry on with your japa.
Like my wife was once relating recently, some months ago, that she preaches to a group. She preaches to different girls. So some of them had come to Mayapur, and one of them was staying in a friend's house, which is empty. And this girl would attend Mangalarti every day, and when he was pakka in Krishna consciousness. But when she left that apartment, she left it in a very, very dirty state. She said my wife said he cannot imagine how dirty it was, which means it kept building up over time and it became so dirty. So that is something which Prabhupada could not tolerate. You need to practice sadhana and also do your duties right. You cannot, in the name of japa, you cannot neglect duties. A good point that you brought this up, Sailesh.
There was a good clarification you made in last week's class, Prabhuji. People misquote Prabhupada. Well, not misquote. People quote cleanliness is next to godliness, but he actually, you rightly pointed out, he clarified cleanliness is godliness. It's not next to, is. So the emphasis is how important on cleanliness is in everything that he wanted.
Yeah, like Prabhupada was fond of saying, he didn't say cleanliness is next to godliness. Prabhupada said cleanliness is godliness. Murija Prabhu mentions that in his book, My Glorious Master. Okay, so thank you all very much for joining. It was a nice session today with what a section about the sannyasis and the grahasthas and Prabhupada, how expertly he deals with the whole situation. We'll resume again. We'll end this chapter next week. There are about 4 more pages left. And then we'll go on to the next chapter.